This is Bud and Chrome, a watch-along podcast for Altered Carbon. I'm Derek.
I'm Van Velding.
And today we are watching Out of the Past. You ready?
Yep.
3, 2, 1, execute.
Right, we didn't do first words.
Oh, we didn't do first words.
Netflix gets first words.
Yeah, I guess so.
So this was your suggestion to me after watching Star Trek at my behest.
Yeah, I think that, one of the things that was different kind of on, in that is that I don't know Star Trek or I haven't consumed Star Trek. And I think it might be fair to say that if we wanted to reverse that, you probably haven't consumed as much like cyberpunk or I guess this type of sci-fi than I have, but maybe not. I really don't know everything that you read, obviously.
Yeah, I read Snow Crash, and I want to say I've read a little more. Who's the guy that did Cryptonomicon? It's probably the Snow Crash guy.
Neil Stephenson.
Yeah, right. So, I know there's another big name in cyberpunk, Gibson.
Philip K. Dick, and
Philip K. Dick, yeah.
The guy who did Neuromancer is. God, why am I blanking on his name? It is Gibson something.
Okay,
William Gibson. It's not Mel Gibson. I promise.
Okay. Yeah, the snake motif is interesting, and then obviously
William Gibson. That's it.
William Gibson. It sockets into the Ouroboros thing, but this is our failed rebellion tattoo insignia. Is that right?
Maybe.
The
the snake there's a lot of snake imagery. I think it has something to do with like the sleeves, right?
Yeah. I didn't really get it in the intro until it showed its shedding, I think, and then I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, and then we're kind of bringing us up to speed. Like it says start your story in the middle, but an action-filled shootout flashback doesn't hurt anyone.
Yeah, no, for sure. It definitely kind of drops you in, and this story has. I would say just without giving anything away, a lot of layers, and so we're getting our first layer here. And as far as kind of gripping people on just kind of a enjoyment aspect, a shootout's sex and then a shootout, is not a bad way to go, I guess.
Yeah. It's what I call a Riker scene. Just it keeps the action up, and of course in a well created.
Yeah.
Story, it fits organically.
Like, it's so weird because, like, they have these stacks in the shower, right? And I still don't understand this. Like, why are they covered in blood? Like, I get that if you were, like, taking a whole bunch of stacks out of people, your hands would be covered in blood. But, like, their hair is covered in blood. Like, everything's covered in blood. And, I still don't... I mean, you never get an explanation, and it really doesn't matter that much. But, it's always one of those things that I find curious.
Maybe they had to sneak in a slaughterhouse cart. I don't know. Maybe they have those.
Yeah, maybe like they cut one open like a tauntaun to get out.
Exactly. One of the things that's interesting here is that he ends up going into the future, and it's the future of the future. So we still lose a certain frame of reference for what that means. Because he's already in space. This place has like a moon, 2 moons.
Yeah, he's on a different planet. Yeah.
And there is, I feel, something in the background about him being, I think, on Earth, right? Whenever he wakes back up.
Right.
Which is, I don't know if he ever leaves Earth again, but I have a feeling that, like, other planets aren't a big deal to Earth for Earth sucks reasons in the future.
We definitely, know, like they kind of they imply or pretty early on, like in this episode, not early on in this episode, but like they imply in this episode that there are other planets, and she mentions after the prison orientation scene that you can needle cast to other worlds, which we don't know what needle casting is.
I mean, we know what it means, but I would assume the average viewer does not. So, Eclipse Phase, which I read the book on that, and then we played it a little bit. Right. I think gives you a lot of prep for this. So
this is kind of interesting to like these. I assume you watch it with the subtitles. If you don't, I definitely recommend it because there's some audio that plays super low that I didn't really catch until I read the subtitles. But you get kind of this this sort of kind of Buddhist almost narrative of just not having your ego getting rid of the details of your life, or at least that's how I kind of took it, which I thought was interesting. But what's also interesting about that is that you have that angle to look at it, but you can also look at it in kind of a nihilist point of view where nothing matters, who cares?
Yeah,
which that comes a little bit later, like after he gets out.
Yeah, I mean, if everything is replaceable, then what's really important?
Right.
We get a little bit of previews for his superpowers, or because it's a science fiction setting, it's like maybe he's just super in tune with his surroundings.
Yeah. I think later, like, even though we get a lot of graphics here, later there's a little more stories, there's a little more context about why he would know these things. And I mean, some of it is certainly like the superpowers that he's ascribed to, the envoyness. But I think you can kind of look at it in a few different ways later on as kind of more details emerge.
Right, and again, that's for now. What do we got? So they're in the flashback. He's fighting a bunch of cops because he and his girlfriend stole a bunch of stacks, and in the present, he's in a. Not a hefty bag, a Ziploc bag. One of them bags that you vacuum up at the end to seal it and to make your blankets all small. You put them in the closet. Yeah. They're waking up from one of those.
I like how he's like kind of manufactured like that that conversation between like the technician and the technician apprentice, where he's like, "Hey man, you got to get used to this. We got 4 more to do."
Yeah.
To where there's no ceremony or specialness in like resleeving. It's just like it's putting a hot pocket in the microwave.
Yeah, and that very much helps the world feel real, and that these people are used to this technology. Although these cops with their stupid bug-eyed transformer helmets that do nothing are the worst.
Are they cops?
I mean, so the deal is that like they have all of this tech gear. They're in the future, man. Future's awesome. And 2 people in their underwear wrapped in post-coital bliss are like, nah, we're going to kill like 8 of them.
Yeah, no. Yeah, they're going to take a few down for sure. Although, I mean, it's kind of weird because I imagine the weapons that they have are not legal. But then it kind of also makes you wonder, like, where's the line for a cop using illegal weapons? Like, can a cop have like a grenade launcher kind of thing? Because we're about to see him kill the first one, right?
Yeah.
And what you'll see is this bullet go through like what looks like solid concrete, and then they fire at the other end, but like it looks like their bullets don't even go through like a layer of concrete, right?
Right.
So, I mean, it seems like they're definitely using 2 different classes of weapons.
Exactly. It's like, do people not know this? Do you not?
Maybe they can only spring for the helmets, the cool helmets, and everything else is just like base tier.
Yeah, and I mean, those helmets, I guess, aren't expected to stop bullets. That's not what helmets do. But at the same time, she's just spraying outright, and guys are going down.
I mean, that's kind of like, come on, you don't have body armor a little bit? Like, you guys should be getting up a little bit at least. Yeah. I mean, this kind of tracks, but only in the sense that it would incapacitate someone, not so much like take you out of the fight.
Right. I'm glad 100%. That her. See, I like the electric grenade, because the electric grenade is like, okay, maybe they can't like fight a whole army here, but the advantage of the enemy is that they have high-tech equipment, so you just create like a counter for that, so they're dependent on the equipment, and then like it works on that level. Yeah. But just
what do you think about this scene right here, where he's kind of he's being kind of reanimated? It seems like these guys are pretty unprepared for this whole situation. But shouldn't they be?
But the deal is that his death was unusually violent. And then they put him into like an Adonis killing machine. And historically, they didn't expect this, so they established that resleeving is supposed to be a hard to adjust to shift. Yeah. So he adjusts quickly, and then in addition, he's also a badass murder machine. So
yeah, I like
here it
to
is
think...
for us simpletons: the image of the old guy and the image of the current guy.
Yeah,
so.
I like to think that that's kind of part of the technique of adapting quickly, is kind of like making sure you can create a link between the previous sleeve and the current sleeve, like quickly.
Yeah, makes sense.
But I don't know.
So,
but like, because like right after he does that, he chills out, right?
Yeah. So
I like that. He's like, no, what planet, Dunny? I know I'm in prison.
Yeah. So he is right there on Earth. They're like, yeah, it's obviously Earth. Where else would you be? So
yeah, he's in what we call the warm liquid goo phase.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's I kind of wrote off those flashbacks as being done at this point, right? We're just like, okay, all right, so he died violently because he was like a badass criminal or whatever, with like, he went to a monastery as a kid or whatever, and so he has like chance that he does when he murders people.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think it's kind of funny too that they chose the prison to be Alcatraz, because I mean, Alcatraz, the name kind of has a certain, evocative, I guess, persona. But here we have like this, this marketing person that's supposed to be cheery, giving you this kind of technical rundown of being released from Alcatraz.
Well, they're giving you the rules of the setting where they just
here, kid, you want smokes?
Yeah, and it's a good little bit they set up here in like what 2 or 3 scenes with this woman.
Yeah, I like. There's a lot of that kind of stuff. There's a lot of like very little like things that they set up that are just not long lived, but I think add depth to the world pretty quickly.
Yeah, and they explain the cortical stack. I mean, we talked in the 17-1 about how the original series of Star Trek is kind of a like public's first intro to science fiction, but science fiction changes. And I think
storytelling, storytelling has changed a lot too.
Yeah, you wouldn't know it here, but
yeah.
But again, it's good. It's another. It feels very much like a public introduction to new science fiction concepes.
Right.
Where
did
he come from? Couldn't he sense those guys through the wall 2 seconds ago?
Yeah, I know, right?
And he just gets ambushed by one. But it's a boss, I get it.
Yeah, I do like this choreography. This is pretty... even though they're doing a lot of, like, cuts, I do like some of the moves that he throws here. It's, like, punches and, like, knees to the chest. You kind of get this impression that even though he's, like, he's murdered a whole bunch of folks, he's kind of outmatched in the terms of strength here when it comes to this dude.
Yeah.
And that girl gets wasted.
Yeah. They put... he does, like, a lot of body blows. Like, a lot of things happen very quickly when he fights the dude in the armor. But the dude is still wearing armor, and I would have appreciated a fight visual which complemented that, which says, hey, look, here's a joint lock. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Where you're in pain. I'm not just hitting you.
Yeah.
But then he gets his ass kicked, so,
Yeah, which, I mean, I think that's kind of, sure, they took down a good bit of people, but then you wonder, okay, does it matter because they can just resleeve them? And then, even though they kind of won the first opening volley, in here, it definitely looks like they have the upper hand now. Like, they kind of wore them down because of superior whatever.
Yeah, I mean, which is what police do, but yeah. Be interesting to see a police force based on single contact. Single combat.
I kind of like this too, because they do. If you're watching the subtitles, you hear like they just went from German to Japanese to English, in one conversation.
Yeah.
But that kind of makes sense given like if you're in a sleeve, you could have like this auto translation deal and not have to worry about it.
Yeah. So here's the point where they actually put a lady in the refrigerator. They kill her. just so he feels bad.
Yeah.
It's like, that's kind of what it does. But I assume she's more important than that, because we see ladies from his past, and one is a sister, and the other one I assume is the lady that runs the envoys. So I would not be surprised if Underpants here is the envoys lady runner.
Yeah.
But she doesn't seem familiar with him in the beginning, where she's like, "Are you always this way?" And
yeah.
So, excuse me.
Yeah, I think that you definitely kind of go into that a little bit later, and it's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And I think what's interesting here too is that he isn't being I don't know if I would consider him being snarky at this point in time. He's more like just, hey, look, I know where I stand in this whole power struggle, so I just don't participate.
Yeah. They mentioned that he did get some kind of military body, which I guess they just had there. But
well, I mean, you get the impression that if this rich dude's gonna own you, he wants to give you a capable, I guess, tool to do the thing that he wants you to do.
Yeah, yeah. He maybe looked through the files and chose what he thought was the best one, which maybe says a little bit about him. But anyway, like, they take prisoners and they give them to... I guess we should talk about that when that happens.
Yeah.
But, yeah, when he says, "I know people like you," I really misheard that line in my first watch through, and I'm like, so what, he's charismatic? Like, on the rewatch, he's like, "Oh, I know people who are similar to you." It's like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, but he's like, no, there's no one else like me. Like, there's no one like me. And that is like an ego thing. That's just kind of like, I guess, more of a commentary about how he doesn't feel like he's not part of this world because he's been on ice for 250 years. Yeah.
So the deal is that this girl died, and they took a prisoner body and gave it to her.
And then, like she was run down in a drive-by, which is kind of jacked up.
Okay, but for prisoners, like, one, this prison doesn't seem to be very rehabilitating.
Yeah.
Two, you just put prisoners on ice, they dream about being in a Bacta tank, and then they're done. And if it's just prisoners, then you get out what you put in, right? You take in 7 prisoners, you put 7 prisoners out, and they just swap bodies. But if suddenly you're giving bodies to little girls who died in car wrecks, then how is it that you don't run out of bodies? You got to keep good bodies coming in.
I mean, they go into later that they can make bodies for sure, but it's expensive and long.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure they don't go too much into details about how that program is run, basically.
Yeah.
What we're getting here is that no matter how far in the future you go, there's still religious folks that don't like progress.
Yeah, this seemed pointless, except for anything but world building, and I assume that they will be relevant later. I hope they'll be relevant later. So, but she's telling him all about sleeves, but he was stealing cortical stacks 200 years ago. So, and re-sleeving and shit. So maybe she's just explaining the current...
I think, well, that was more of a social program. Like, he was commenting on, like, hey, you're going to re-sleeve a girl into this, like, old criminal's body? Like, that's jacked.
Yeah. And, again, that dimension plays into something about murder victims to testify against people. And so, again, I assume that this is a story point which will come up later, since our main plot is... What is on this bridge? Is that cars or is that trash?
That is a city.
Okay. All right. So people live on the Golden Gate Bridge.
Yeah, on the bridge. Yep.
All right, then.
Bridges are no longer for driving.
So, so now we have a whole new conflict here. Your legs don't work, buddy. There's bullets in them. I don't care
but
how
he
much...
doesn't care. He's mad. Super mad, you guys. Super mad.
There are bullets in the parts of the go bits of the legs.
Go bits.
I mean, he might as well cut off his legs, jump into a heap of jello, and then make the jello run. But he's just so angry.
Well, I mean, I guess this is like a power struggle right here, right? He's like, stay down, and he's like, he knows that he can't win the fight, but he refuses to obey, I guess.
I guess. I
like... He's got pluck, man. He's got pluck.
I like that they omitted the scene where the German guy just takes a cool step to the side and what's his name runs past full of bullets.
Yeah, like ole.
Yeah, like, that would have been a pretty cool shot actually. But yeah, so he loses the war, and I get like a Firefly feel from this, where
okay,
right?
But you haven't watched Firefly.
Yeah, I know what it is though. I mean,
okay,
they lost a war, and now like they don't want to fit into the society that won the war. I didn't catch these tubes the first time. I get a real Futurama feel off of the tubes that run across New San Francisco, full of like elevators, I guess.
Yeah, so. I mean, you get a lot of smog here too. You know, when we do get like scenes that are shot out the window, you only see like these spires, and in between is like very foggy.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of color, but there isn't a lot of depth, I would say, and I think part of that has to do with like the smog, perhaps.
I guess I just took it as being cloudy because it's a blue tinge, and then we get water. I mean, technically they went from the city to the cloud layer, so that's probably why there's water. But the blue haze mixed with the water and then the clouds gives me the impression that it's foggy, or perhaps even that it's like a hollow mist because they're projecting holograms into it, rather than smog.
Maybe.
It's thematically appropriate for it to be smog, though.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, either way, you know, they definitely wanted to set up this shot of like going through the less lighted area to come to this bright, shining, kind of Olympus-like area.
Yeah. And she mentioned a little bit back, like, "Oh, a meth? You know what a meth is?" And it's like, and again, another shot every time they take. They have a new proper noun. Yeah, they do, and that's the balance, is that you either have this thing where you're giving us like meths and envoys and whatever else you got, or you have, and I read a bit lately where someone wrote 1,000-year history of their future, and the seminal alien attack on humanity. The aliens were not named; they were just mysterious, and then like they put all the other pieces in together. It definitely felt unrealistic.
Yeah, they could have just called the aliens bad guys.
Anything. But they didn't, because they didn't care. So I'd much rather have meths and envoys, and this kind of stuff. So she's a cop that can't drive suddenly.
Yeah, I guess she just isn't often driver. Maybe like driving that particular car that isn't hers was weird. I don't know why she crashes. It's kind of odd.
Yeah.
I guess just to kind of show in the story, well, like, hey, the jig's up. I'm not really a driver. I'm a cop. Freeze! I'm a cop.
Exactly. So,
here we go. Miss Nips Bancroft. We get introduced to.
Yeah, I mean, I floated the idea of sensation and sensuality for the name of this podcast because, you know, what's his name in the background there? He's going to go out and do a whole backpack full of drugs, and then try to fuck some robots, and a very gross indulgence in sensation before going back on the ice.
Yeah. Right.
Whereas this entire setup is set up to be more sensual, with a more pretentious appeal to those same base emotions.
I mean, when I read this, it was very much like this is Hera or Aphrodite of Olympus.
Yeah.
And you know, the patriarch would be your Zeus.
So that one look with the beardy guy, it is super improbable that he is the German guy. But I mean, obviously he's connected to Adonis here. I forget his name. Somehow,
you're definitely on the right track for sure. There's some history.
All right, and that's, you know, it's not like I decoded it. They had an entire scene where the two guys looked at each other for like no fucking reason.
Yeah.
And then our story moves on. So I mean, there's this. Yeah, it's adequately foreshadowed, I'd say.
And this is where we kind of get a little bit of implication here that there's some aliens involved in this story, or in this world, rather, in the world build. Excuse me. And this is part of it, the song Spire Tree.
Right. And, you know, that makes sense. You my takeaway here is obviously, hey, look, rare, ancient, sacred, alien flora that you've taken to Earth for bad reasons. And then it was very important to these people, and for her, it's just a status symbol.
Well, those people are envoys. That's where the connection is between the Songspire and the Stronghold, as he mentioned. Stronghold was like the envoy hideout, I guess.
Yeah.
Or like the base of operations.
It's a very effective collection of elements that are forwarded in that brief scene. We establish her character. Oh, cost is no object, and he's like, oh, this is super sacred to me, or whatever. And then, like you said, a little bit of aliens. So it does a lot of work. As you want all of your scenes to do that much work.
I mean, it definitely like primes the pump, and like I said, with these layers, kind of how they set up the layers of the story is that they'll definitely do just these little bits of scenes that don't look like they mean much. Still kind of provide some depth, but they're kind of priming the pump for some sort of explanation later, and it kind of gets sprinkled throughout the season as kind of seasons on Netflix are really just one long story that you can binge watch.
Yeah, I have we done that rant yet about whether or not these episodes even need names?
A little bit.
Okay.
You mentioned in the beginning how whether or not they need names, but I mean it is for the people who want the lore, right? Who want the background. The names can also kind of provide a little bit more context.
Yeah, So, did they ever explain why Bancroft here is rich for any reason other than having his name on a building in Annapolis? Because, like,
they just imply that he's a rich dude because of how old he is, and he's just had all this time to be rich. Yeah. They do mention a little bit about like what his particular industry is, but I think that comes later.
Yeah, they call him a captain of industry in the episode description, and I'm just racking my brain trying to think of
what's the industry?
The industry of tacky library design.
Yeah, no, it's really the industry of like oppressing people. It's a high business nowadays.
I mean, of course. It is interesting that these people. The episode effectively expresses how these people have all this rare bullshit. But they just throw it together and it's a bunch of random garbage that doesn't complement. Right? This library looks like trash. There's a random tree in their foyer. They got the clay statues just in their garden. Like it's just a house that's full, as George Carlin might say, it's full of their shit. Right. And it's just piled high, and they're so fucking proud of it.
And I mean, in my mind, I think if I were to live, it's kind of like it would almost be like a house of memories. That if you live over 300 years, you accumulate a lot of memories that you would perhaps use items to trigger certain parts of your life instead of like keeping all of that in your head.
At the same time, it's like buying the Mickey Mouse suit from the time you went to Disneyland.
Yeah, that's
and
also
like
true.
One of like the Spanish flag from the time you went to Six Flags, and you're like, oh, look at it, it's so great. We've been through so much. I'm like, what about the other 364 days of your life? Where's like their drunk kid's first tricycle that he built from his own hands, and what about the desiccated, mummified corpse of his first sleeve? They're like, oh yeah, Timmy died. He fell down a well. But this is him.
But we re-sleeved him. It's fine.
Always 8 o'clock, and now he's re-sleeved. Oh, not 8 o'clock. Always 8 years old.
Yeah.
There's nothing filial here.
That's kind of funny that the whole always 8 years old. That's you hit on something there. That comes a little bit later.
Yeah, it's that Fallout 4 experience.
But this is good here. We're getting this conversation where it's like, hey, look, man, I can buy anything I want. And the dude says, I fought a war to stop people like you. I'm not for sale.
Yeah.
But they're still having a conversation.
Yeah,
So we get the stakes, right? Pardon, money, credit.
Yeah, it's pretty standard motivation. Like, you put your character in a hole, and then he's like, if you do this, I will give you a plug shaped in the exact dimensions to your hole that you're in. Weird. Let's get this story going. And of course we get the dramatic reveal of the murder, where this guy kind of looks like the first Highlander.
Yeah, I was going to say that too. He definitely looks like the first Highlander, whose actor's name I'm Christopher Lambert.
There you go. There you go.
He looks like a kind of an older version of Christopher Lambert.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Christopher Lambert currently looks like an older version of Christopher Lambert.
Yeah, also true.
Disappointing that he's not in this. Because, I mean, if I have to see someone to go, is that Christopher Lambert? I'd much rather be watching Christopher Lambert.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
Totally same.
And he needs to redeem his cyberpunk credentials after Highlander 2. I think that's fair.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
yeah, no, he needs to show that he knows what's up.
It's like, give him a shot at redemption.
Excuse me. So yeah, we're... It's kind of interesting. I still love the whole kind of, he's speaking Arabic, she's speaking Spanish, they still understand each other. It's almost as if like different languages are more just kind of comfort food of language instead of just the only way you communicate with people.
Yeah. I kind of like this weird, I love the clustered police station. I think there's stained glass at the far end of this building. Yeah. I always love, like, Hollywood does this where it's like, oh, it's a police station made out of like an old church or whatever, and it's like, this was just the set you have, didn't it? Because police stations suck.
Yeah.
And you're just it probably also talks about how the setting, people exist in whatever space is available for different functions. So the new world has had to override the old world. So this looks like it used to be a church because people don't use churches anymore. So the police got a good deal on this church real estate for their new precinct.
Oh, they probably just took it. It's fine. It's for the state. But you kind of get the sense that they just like, oh, we digitized it. You can go in VR and check it out, but we need to use it for other things now.
Yeah. And of course, like that wouldn't be very dramatic at all, would you? If you just digitized everything. Anyway, so we get like the murder mystery, which is pretty anemic here. But like it's functional, where he's like, oh, it's set up, and then I learned something in 48 hours that I didn't want to know, and then maybe I killed myself, and then although that's a heck of a suicide shot, but whatever. Yeah. I guess maybe if it goes up, like, so his family doesn't give a shit about him, so everyone immediately assumes that his family murdered him for stupid reasons.
I mean, that's a narrative that is certainly not so much been done before, but certainly tracks that, if you're rich and powerful, maybe your family kind of is tired of you leading the house and wants a shot themselves, kind of thing.
Yeah. In murder mysteries like this, the twist is always, well, maybe he killed himself. Yeah. Like some of the best murder mysteries I've seen on TV, in terms of just pure enjoyment, not like the high art of murder mysteries, is just the ones where, oh, who's the killer? And it's like, oh, it was the first victim of the killer. He faked his own death. I'm like, I fall for that every time. But so here they get that twist on the table and they immediately push it out.
They put everything. They kind of put all of the conventional wisdom out on the table in front of you, and still say, no, there's something here, or at least imply that there's still something here.
Right. And so I think the mystery here isn't who killed Bancroft. I accept that he probably did it himself. Although if he did do it, he says at one point, if I wanted to kill myself, I'd be dead. But what I would much prefer is I would have just picked up the phone, canceled my backup service, and then blew out my own stack. Right. Like to provide like the reasonable alternative of how he would have done it, rather than just going, oh no, I'm omnicompetent. Look at me. Look at this amazing body. I know what I'm about. I can just destroy myself if I wanted to. I wouldn't fuck that up. So the mystery is about what happened in those 48 hours that made Bancroft want to end his existence. Yeah. And you've mentioned that he's apparently in the oppression industry. So, it would be interesting if a real human act of compassion made Bancroft kill himself.
That would definitely be interesting, because then it would show that maybe this dude is more human than just kind of like this static bad guy figure.
Yeah. So, and he's not really a bad guy figure. He just seems rich and willing to take advantage of that, and a little bit out of discord with the reality of
just
him.
A tad.
Yeah, well, I mean, but he has the money, so he doesn't need to be in reality. It's the trick. Is it?
I mean, yeah, certainly money will do that for sure. Yeah. And it is interesting. This is where we get like a shot on a different world.
Yeah.
And so this is kind of your implication because the two moons in the background.
Yeah.
Background rather.
So, and his sister. So, and we move into the part of the story where we're not about rich people in the plot. We're in the story about this guy and why he does what he do.
Yeah.
So I believe this is his sister and her final sleeve.
Yeah, this is her.
Yeah. And they set up the hallucinations and things like that earlier. So
yeah, and like you have to kind of like when I first watched this, he's talking to her, and I knew that part was a hallucination. And like he eventually throws his book in the water, and I thought he legit did that.
Yeah.
I didn't catch like the very short scene right after where it still shows him without the hallucination holding the book.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I guess that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, I just happened to catch that, which I thought was interesting because he's still holding it right there.
Yeah.
So, and
that's I don't know how I missed it. I just totally missed it.
It happens. You can look away for a second.
See, look at all the smog here, and we're gonna see some people that are that have breathing masks as they're walking through the street.
Yeah.
Kind of evocative of like Beijing, China, or like places with bad air quality, like Los Angeles.
Yeah. You can see a couple guys here and there. So, I have no idea how people find drug dealers.
Me either. It's certainly a skill. I imagine body language and just being in the right place, knowing where those sorts of people congregate is probably part of it, and not being afraid to just say, "Hey, I want some drugs."
So props to that drug dealer for putting neon lights inside of his backpack of illegal drugs. Like, oh, could I interest you in some illegal drugs?
That's someone who thinks about the experience, right? Like, hey, I'm going to be dealing at night. Everyone wants to see the merchandise. Let's put some lights in this backpack.
I mean, yeah, but in which case the backpack is just an investment. But
I do like how how he has the backpack, and he's like, as you mentioned before, this tall Adonis murder machine, and but he's holding like this what looks like a little kid's unicorn backpack.
Okay, so that's what this is. All right, I didn't quite catch this the first time around because I thought it was the drugs, because he does a bunch of drugs, then he does this thing, but it turns out he puts in a contact lens which uploads data to him. Which is what the detective
it's like a
used
computer.
Earlier.
It's kind of like essentially everyone's phone. So like all of this stuff is like he's getting like augmented mixed reality type of stuff, just streamed directly to his eyes.
Yeah,
or his eye rather.
And they showed that a little bit with the detective, but now they're going full into it. Which again, I'm sure that like the presence of the drugs like is supposed to make this weirder. Like we understand it's messed up, but it's supposed to be surreal. And the way I kind of read this is just like this is the dirt of society. Like this is as far bottom as you can go, where drugs are here and all of the base kind of desires are catered to. Hallucinogens. You can't trust reality. Everyone's looking out for themselves, etc. Yeah. So
here we get the officer again, right? She's still on the case, but she seems nicer now.
She's super tracking him like everywhere. Because
she was super mad before, but now she's chill.
She was angry that a trained killer was put loose in her precinct, and now she's figuring out what he's up to, and you can do that with carrots instead of sticks.
Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting that they're kind of both kind of having this kind of sort of civil conversation. I mean, as civil as you can have with a police officer and a dude who's high.
Yeah. Well, she wants something from him, and she wants more than a drug bust out of this guy.
Right.
If drugs are even illegal, which we don't know. I mean, we presume because it's from a guy with a backpack, but
yeah. Well, I mean, she could bust him for the drugs, but Bancroft probably can get him out easy.
Yeah. So anyway,
so this is where we get the lowdown of like his superpowers, which is essentially, if you read about mindfulness, is just kind of letting your ego take a side and taking the world around you without any sort of expectation.
Yeah. Is he?
I like this right here. I like how they go through his names, and he's like, "Ooh, I like Ice Pick. You should call my Ice Pick."
Oh, for a guy who just got off the ice, I'm sure.
Yeah, but I mean, Ice Pick has that whole like murderer kind of vibe to it, right? To telling a police officer, "Hey, call me Ice Pick."
Yeah. But they have something in common. Where
They both don't like this Bancroft dude.
Exactly. They're working on the same case, and she now has an in against Bancroft, a guy who's messing with her. So she has a motivation to want this case done, apparently.
Yeah. But I mean, she's but is he? I mean, he's not working. Well, we don't know if he's working on the case or not, right? Like he's kind of just looking to get. Well, I guess he's about to say that he's looking to just get high, get laid, and be done with it.
Yeah, I think that context was here. I think he told that to his hallucination sister earlier.
Oh yeah, that's true.
And then there's like 9 more episodes of this season, so we know he's going to take the case.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it would be interesting if he just takes the money and runs and just, like that's the entire story is Bancroft's after him and something, the murder or whatever. But, he's going to take the case.
Yeah.
And her deal with the police is that she's like, "Oh, I'm just so busy I can't do a murder." But it seems kind of silly where she's like, "Oh, I got too many."
I mean, she said she's busy, but she's like, it's open and shut. Like everybody knows all of the things that are super obvious on the table. And as a busy policewoman, she's like, "Hey, look, we did all the things we're supposed to do. It's him. He just doesn't believe it. So he's rich. No one's going to if he wants to believe it, he'll do whatever he wants. But we did our job, basically."
Yeah. So, it's like you guys are both sad because you both recognize in this capitalistic hellhole that there is a demand from a rich guy. You just need to meet that. Tell him whatever you want. Frickin' Rasputin it up, dudes.
Interesting. You should remember that. Tell him whatever you want.
Well, yeah, because that's what you do. I like there's a little bit there where they talk about how the currency's actually exchanged with thumbprints of all things, which is interesting.
Yeah, well, I like how DNA is based on the transaction. It is pretty interesting if you ask me. And they do. There's a bit later that you'll see where they do an exchange, and it's pretty. The way they exchange currency is pretty evocative, I think.
Yeah.
And I thought the way they did that was pretty good. It's such a small detail to me, but I think it's cool.
So
he's like, "Hey, look, I'm gonna go get laid, go get a meal, take more drugs, and then go back on ice forever."
And it does feel like we shift pretty sharply into just setting up this last action scene to keep the action scenes up. If no one ever goes here, how is this huge hotel in business?
You find out, and this isn't really like a big reveal, but I mean, that dude is an AI, so like the whole hotel is like a machine.
Right.
So as far as like overhead, once you've paid for the machine, it can kind of run itself, is my assumption.
It would be hilarious if there's just like one guy in a set of coveralls that comes by and there's like he has a key behind the desk and like it just comes out in a bunch of quarters and he just loads them up, takes it to the bank. So it's just a turnkey operation. But but when they say no one goes there, like some people got to go there.
Well, I mean, he does say later on. He'll say that this dude is his first customer in 5 decades. So it's been 50 years before he's had a customer.
That is insane. Even property taxes.
Yeah. I mean, who knows? Maybe if you're in the dirt, nobody cares about taxes because no one would want it anyway.
I mean, it's got to be like really high cost. I can't.
Yeah.
Like the thought that in this teeming, living, bottom of the rainforest, everything eats everything, organism of a cyberpunk city, there's just real estate and a business that no one goes to. It's a bit much. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it is, and it like you. I definitely would like to have a little bit more understanding about like how that kind of works. But I mean, right now all we have is just kind of like, hey, AI hotels, nobody uses them anymore, but they still exist for whatever reason. The only other thing you'll get a little bit later is that AIs are kind of like people, but because they don't have any overhead, like needing to sleep or eat, maybe they are good with money. I don't they don't have to spend money on shit other than what they want. I don't know.
Yes. Anyway, I feel like
I like that. He had it coming. He was rude. Like he's like, I sympathize with you, man.
Yeah. So like this guy's an idiot. But apparently...
Yeah, but I like how this fight works, because normally you would expect this to be kind of like, yeah, he's going to take them all out because he's just super badass. But they're playing different games right now, right?
Yeah, I mean, once the bellhop insists and they start replaying they're like crazy girlfriends. Yeah, you're like, yeah, all right, he's going to use that to, like, I get it. And I feel like they hammered a bit. But whatever.
I mean, I think this is kind of just like explaining the world a little bit. Like, you had two kind of statements in passing, but if you're going to make it the key to winning an action scene, maybe you err on the side of caution.
I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, like it is kind of a lot in a very small amount of time.
Right. But it's it's a good action scene where again he isn't. I do appreciate that he's not just like super badass.
Yeah.
That he's talking and positioning himself and all this kind of stuff.
He's also showing that like he can take a hit, like he can, that's kind of what I like too. Is that I love fight scenes where it's like both sides end up getting hit because it's more realistic. You're not about not getting hit because both are going to get hit. It's about winning the fight.
Yeah.
This is the one thing I don't get. You're going to later see, like, I don't know if the AI hotel, like the Edgar Allan Poe looking dude, if he's actually a physical thing or not.
Right. Because he has a gun.
He has the gun, but I don't know if it's just kind of like some user interface with like the two Gatling guns or not. But then again, like he does, it looks like he does shoot the gun and that bullet does hit someone. So I guess he has to be physical, but I don't know, it's super weird.
He could be a turret, I don't know, and the hologram's projected over the turret whenever he's behind the table. But I think he moves later. But, so yeah, these mercenaries are stupid. And apparently this bad guy's like an expert, like professional bad person.
He's a hitman?
Yeah.
I love this. I love how he's just like, yep, just another day.
Yeah.
It's a good way of like you have a lot of stuff going on, but you create a little bit of space by having like that just kind of brief moment of brevity. And I like here, like, hey, look, he's trying to keep him alive so he can interrogate him.
Right.
But the guy recognizes that and realizes this dude is going to go crazy and kill him anyway.
Yeah.
So he's gotten away, basically.
Right. So yeah, no, but like they mentioned later that he's like a version of someone else or something. Like he paid to copy himself. Is that right?
Yeah. So he was double sleeved. Is I think the term they use. I do like how he's in a perfect ally. Real quick, I like how he's like, oh yeah, I'm sorry. I guess you didn't want me to do that. You did mention to stop. Would you hey, how about a good thing? You want to take a shower? We have showers ready.
Yeah.
I just like how he's so kind of a little bit clueless, and I think it's cute.
Yeah.
But yeah, they mentioned that he's double sleeved, and so the idea being that the real Dimitri, whoever that is, copies himself and puts him in another sleeve, so you have two Dimitris running around at once.
So he is just a fork.
Which is illegal.
Right. But you can't just copy yourself, because now you're all just a bunch of digital data.
Yeah, the digital human freight, the thing that goes in the cortical stack, you can't copy yourself now.
So, if the religious guys hate re-sleeving, why do they even have stacks? Do they have stacks?
I don't know. They don't really go into, like, is a stack kind of like a tattoo, like you have to be 18 to get one, or is it like at birth where, like your vaccination, everybody gets one? Because, I mean, if you look at stacks in the way you look at...
they mention it.
You know, like cloud servers, they're going to make it easy for you to upload your information, but they're going to make it hard for you to get your information out.
In the rundown from the hologram lady, I think she says at the age of 3 you get one or something. Okay. So I think everybody gets one. So there you go, first 5 decades. Well, there he says defense in the first 5 decades. So he may have had someone else.
Yeah, before. yeah. Maybe he's had some more. That was just the last time he's had to defend a guy.
Yeah, and so.
I like that. Like, hey, you shot people for less. It's cool. Just don't make it a big deal.
Yeah. So right, and I kind of assume that the person behind all of this is German guy who has every reason to still be alive and to still be powerful and to hate this motherfucker.
Yeah.
Like, he probably murdered a lot of people. Maybe for good reasons. I don't know his reasons.
I like that. Did you see how he kisses his backpack before he puts it on?
Yeah.
It's so good. Like the backpack comes just kind of like not a running gag, but it's just it stays throughout the season basically.
That's good.
It's always just funny to me, like how he he keeps it, but then if you remember, envoys take what is offered.
All right. I didn't catch that part, but that makes sense. So,
here we kind of get dropped into another hallucination.
Yeah, are we going to get fewer hallucinations as this goes forward, or are we going to keep doing this?
Yeah, fewer. We're still going to get flashbacks, but the flashbacks are going to make more sense, and there's going to be fewer of them for sure.
All right. So, I mean, flashbacks are fine. The hallucination, like the difference is negligible. I just feel like there's a certain amount of pretense to the hallucinations versus the flashbacks.
I mean, to me, I think it's just kind of fresh. It's like a fresh way to do flashbacks instead of just cut, you're in a different way, cut back, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Having some sort of visual element in the current scene and then going into the flashback and having the same visual element, I think is kind of a fresh way of doing it.
Yeah, plus acting.
Yeah, plus acting.
So, I guess... So he's just doing... Is he doing drugs in an alley now, or is he in the actual bordello?
Yeah, I mean, you don't really know.
It would be great.
This could be like a VR thing, or just some sort of like virtual reality room deal. Because I mean, that gun is real if he's going to kill himself with it.
Yeah, I guess he took it off one of the guys. I guess he is in a back alley now because he is. This is the part. Yeah. It would be hilarious though if all of the rooms in the brothel were just like recreations of gritty back alleys. Like,
yeah.
Womp womp.
Haven't you ever wanted to have sex in public? Go back to Bourbon Street in a piss-filled alley.
So I'm trying to think of like a magical setting where like you can walk between alleyways in different cities as long as they're piss soaked. So you're just like, look, that's the sound of men urinating. We can get to Boston. All right.
I do this kind of eventually, like, this doesn't change, like him talking to who you later learn to be Falconer, if you haven't caught that yet.
Yeah, I kind of figured it was Falconer.
And so, I do like how he, like, this kind of conversation between kind of his conscious brain, and she kind of represents his unconscious brain.
All right.
And how this conversation, like, it still happens.
Yeah.
Throughout, like, the season.
Yeah.
And I think it's done pretty good because she says things in a certain way that makes sense, because she says there's more than you're willing to see, and you should continue the mission.
I agree. I mean, it's for a character's internal monologue. It's good to have like an imaginary character they can talk to,
and also like you have this narrative of like trusting and communicating with the subconscious, like the envoy intuition. So you even set up the superpowers to kind of support this form of internal dialogue.
Yeah. And in addition, I guess it's going to characterize Falconer, or at least how he sees Falconer, who's a pretty big part of this whole philosophy. So,
right.
But really,
I like this visual here. Well, I like how colorful this visual is. I just wish it wasn't so flat. I wish I had a little bit more volume. But I mean, I get why it's there. It's supposed to kind of show the bigness of what he's faced with and the smallness of himself.
Yeah. Again, it feels like a pretty standard. Well, I'll get to it. I want to let. I mean, white supremacists know to hide this shit. You know, they're like, hey, I need to get an Iron Cross tattoo. I mean, the stupid ones, obviously. But he's going to be like, yeah, nope, signing up for the Envoy. Put the Ouroboros on my arm again. It's like, dude, this is the exact shit. This is the exact shit from before. You shouldn't fucking just like broadcast it, you know? Play it cool, man. Play it cool for like a whole episode.
Yeah. So that's all we get. That's, you know, you assume that he accepts the mission. And he takes the case for whatever reason.
Yeah, well, it is a way for him to continue to do envoyness, whatever their goals were. Intuition, drugs, maybe some violence, trees.
Maybe that should have been the title: Intuition and Drugs.
Yeah. But yeah, it feels like a pretty standard cyberpunk setting, like with a few twists. But we'll see how it turns out.
Yeah, for sure. We definitely will. And so next week we're going to watch Fallen Angel. So
it's old Kovacs in a burning forest. He's going to track down a guy who sent Bancroft a death threat. That'll close the case. Lieutenant Ortega bends the rules to keep tabs on his whereabouts. Are there even any rules for these cops in the first place? Does she just...
For cops in general.
Continue bending the rules, but just piss off someone of some significant power? That sounds more likely.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's it. That's the thing. It's next week.
All right. Yeah. We'll see.
All right.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.